The Commanders get mollywopped by a third-string quarterback, and much more on this edition of the Commanders Gridiron Report.
If I point a finger, that's point of attack. Good point, who's next? Flag on the plate, now I'm causing them death. We bet on ourselves, so what you expect? A die-hard fan, never live with regret. Yes, sir. Go to my neck. Burgundy flex. Who wants the smoke? We bringing it home. Beat my gas. Look how we step. Who we got next? Step on the right, step on the left. Who do we rep? Commanders. Where's my soldiers? Right side, Commanders. Where's my soldiers? Left side, Commanders. Where's my soldiers? Right in the middle, Commanders. Where's my soldiers? High off the way that this sound, they turn up as soon as they feet hit the ground. I am not playing around. I hit them, I bet that they feeling me now.
Welcome, one and all across the nation and around the world. I welcome you all to episode 12 of the Commanders Gridiron Report. I am your host, Drew Willingham, and today we have a special episode as we have a special guest today. We don't have some good things to say about the Commanders, but we'll get into that and much more on this episode. I have to welcome back someone who has been on Sartoba Media Program and is someone who I've done a lot of projects with during my time at Legacymaker Sports Network. A lot of in or out sports debates together and many other projects that you can see in my portfolio as well on SartobaMedia.com. But guys, this person right here brings you the entertainment, definitely with Robb Johnson Entertainment. He is definitely a great writer for New Kent County News and Charles City County's Chronicle that they have. Give it up for the man, myth, and legend from the Legacymaker Sports Network. Robb Johnson, welcome back, brother.
Hey, man, what's going on? How are we doing today?
Hey, doing well. Considering the way that the Commanders took that L yesterday, I'm doing well, but we got that and much more to cover on this edition. Let's go ahead and take it into the 1st and 10 and see what we got to discuss there.
They are the Washington Commanders. New name, new marks, new uniform.
Soldiers, are we ready for Operation Burgundy?
And here with the 1st and 10, the Commanders get embarrassed by the Giants' third-string quarterback in the 31-19 loss. Now, looking at this game, what were your thoughts, especially early on when looking at this game and how it unraveled to the 31-19 loss for the Commanders?
Well, this is the problem, Drew. I think a lot of times when we look at the game of football, we look at the names, we think to ourselves, we shouldn't be losing to this guy. He's Tommy DeVito, and the Giants have lost so much on offense. They've lost so much on defense. But if you look at the course of the season, the Giants have played really hard football. You look at some of the Washington Commanders' weapons. They're good weapons. The problem is, you look at a guy like Jahan Dotson. He hadn't had 100 yards all year except for the Eagles game. And this is the thing that I think that a lot of people are forgetting. The Commanders, if they had won those two games, they come into yesterday's game, 6-5 with an opportunity to get back in the division, win the game. You got 7 wins. That's 7-4.
I'd say more like 5-5 because they'd only had played 10 games leading up to yesterday, and they, in my opinion, with some of the way these games have been, should have at least been 5-5.
Yeah, well, I think they still should have beat the Eagles. I think the bottom line, Drew, is that when you look at the Commanders game yesterday, all right, for example, here's the problem that you have when you have a guy like Eric Bieniemy, and I'm an Eric Bieniemy fan, but here's the issue. Sam Howell, and for all the Sam Howell stuff I've said, I do not hate Sam Howell. I think he was a decent guy coming out of North Carolina. But my problem with Sam Howell has always been he tries to play hero ball. He tries to play that Baker Mayfield type. And even though right now he has 19 touchdowns, 13 interceptions, that's still very good. For the amount of yards that he has, over 3,000, it's still very good. But here's the ultimate issue. Brian Robinson, 17 carries, 73 yards. That's 4.3 yards per carry. Rodriguez, 6 carries, 43 yards, 7.2 yards per carry. They have got to run the football more. If they're going to have any chance Thursday, they got to run the football more. But ultimately, the reason I think this game went the way it went, Drew, is because the rumors, in my opinion, are true. Bill Belichick is going to be the next head coach of this football team, and he's going to bring Josh McDaniels with him. And these coaches and these players are just this. I feel like they said yesterday, screw it. But I also got to give some credit to Tommy DeVito. 43 touchdowns, 16 interceptions in his career in college, 15 touchdowns, 4 interceptions at Illinois. They nearly pulled off upsets against Michigan in his final year. He's a better quarterback than we think he is, and he's very athletic. If you guys actually go back and watch the Dallas game, don't look at the score, actually look at the game. DeVito made plays, and that's why I had actually texted Darrell Owens on the Legacymaker Sports Network. He told him, I said, look, man, this DeVito guy's better than what people think. So if the Commanders come in and think, oh, we're just going to do whatever, that's the problem. They didn't come in prepared. And when you don't make adjustments, that's why you get beat 31-19.
Yeah, I mean, you throw a lot of solid points there. And looking at this game right here, you know, if you see our show that we have on Tuesday mornings, Total Football Talk with myself and Cole Johnson, where we give a review of all 32 teams, I have been throwing some shade on Tommy DeVito over the past few weeks, saying he's the long-lost relative of Danny DeVito, and he's not so good to even have the name Tommy. We should call him Tony DeVito. That's what I've been saying on Total Football Talk for the past 3 weeks. But this kid showed up, shelled out yesterday, threw a few touchdowns. Now, we'll get into our players of the game, our soldiers of the week here shortly, and talk more of the impact of where those big touchdowns came from, because one person gave him 2 of those 3 touchdowns. But looking at this game, the kid stepped up. I mean, he was 18 to 26, for 18 to 26 for 246 yards and 3 touchdowns. I mean, he showed up yesterday. So from a third-string quarterback, you have to give Brian Daboll credit. I mean, they are much better than what the record is. For him to get that type of production out of that quarterback, out of a third-string quarterback, a no-name who still lives with his parents, and his mom makes his bed and makes peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for him. I mean, looking at all that, this kid showed up. He did his job, and you have to be proud of it if you are a Giants fan. And we got a couple comments here. It looks like Ike is here in the comments. Says, "What's up, fellas? My team whooped that yesterday. Time to acknowledge me, Drew." Well, when it comes to that, Ike, since you are a Giants fan, I'll go ahead and give it to you.
Acknowledge me.
I mean, I'll acknowledge the fact that you beat the Commanders twice this year. The Giants themselves beat the Commanders twice this year, and I have to give it more on the coaching of Brian Daboll and, the presence of Saquon Barkley, of course, as well, for what he's done with the team as well. He has definitely been the driving force of those 3 wins that they have, and has kept them close in the other games that they have lost as well. But, I mean, looking at the 2 matchups, the Commanders on paper and what they've done coming into this game, being 4-6, they looked like the premier team in the matchup, not only this time, but the first time they played. The Commanders should have won both of these games. And when you look at it, they should right now be 6-5 going into this week against the Cowboys. But we'll talk more about that matchup there and much more here in this episode. But when it comes to that, Ike also saying, let's go. And with that, we'll go ahead and take that motivation into the Burgundy Flex review, talk about some of what we thought were the highlights of this game.
Go to my neck, Burgundy Flex. Who wants the smoke? We bringing it home. Be like that.
And here with the Burgundy Flex review, we'll take a look at the highlights from Week 11 in our opinion. And I'll start this one out by saying, there wasn't many highlights from the Commanders side, except for one player that we'll talk about when we get to the Soldiers of the Week here in a little bit. But, I would say for the Giants, highlights that you got there with a 40-yard pass from Tommy DeVito to Darius Slayton. That was definitely a highlight for the Giants. That came in the second quarter to put them up 14-3 over the Commanders. Of course, Saquon Barkley had that 24-yard reception in the first quarter to give them the 7-0 lead. But I still look at the Tommy DeVito to Darius Slayton 40-yard pass as a big highlight. When you look at this game, Rob, do you agree with those highlights right there, or do you have some other ones you want to add into that?
I definitely have to add in Saquon Barkley. I've been tough on him over the years because I don't think that the Giants should have picked him that high. But when you look at a guy who runs the ball 14 times for 83 yards, when you look at a guy who catches 4 balls for 57 yards and 2 touchdowns, especially the way this offensive line has gone, especially how loyal he's been, the Giants are going to have to find some way somehow to get up out of that Daniel Jones contract. They're going to pay this man in the offseason because who has been more loyal than Saquon Barkley? Who's taken more injuries than Saquon Barkley? I agree with you on the Slayton play. 4 catches, 82 yards, one of his best production days of the year. I do have to give the Commanders some credit. I give Sam Howell some credit. I give Sam Howell credit in the fact that he threw the ball 45 times, even though I feel like they should have ran the ball more. So shout out to him. I got to give some shout out to the Commanders defense because even though they gave him some big plays, they still sacked the man 9 times, man. They still sacked him 9 times. So, I mean, at the end of the day, you lose. I don't care what people say. You lose a Chase Young. You lose a Montez Sweat, and you still were able to sack him 9 times. Imagine if they were there. They probably would have sacked him 20 times. I mean, it would have been hard. And that's what I'm saying. It's like you give up Chase Young, who's a Cowboys killer, and look what he's doing in San Francisco. They would have won the game yesterday if those guys were there. And that says more about ownership to me. So shout out to the defense for actually trying, despite the ownership again.
No, you're right. And when it comes to that, I mean, the second and third round picks, the second round pick you got for Montez Sweat and the third round pick you got for Chase Young. I mean, it's good to have the capital in the draft, but like you just said, it's trash. I mean, when I looked at that Chase Young trade, all I could think was when Rick James said this.
Now, that is absurd.
That's pretty much what I was thinking because you waited till the last possible second to move him, and were pretty stingy with your trades to where the best offer that came was from the 49ers for a third-round pick because you knew at the end of this season you weren't going to be able to re-sign it, because of the way things have been going in that franchise for quite some time. So with Dan Snyder and everything that had come about, now things are different. But, you can't blame the kid who would want to take the money and go elsewhere and have a better shot at success, especially being on the 49ers.
And here's the screwed up part about this. We had this topic when we talked Commanders. I can't remember. You have to go find episode. I think it was 2 or 3 years ago when maybe 2 years ago, we were talking about Young and I was talking about the Bosa brothers. He was actually outplaying the Bosa brothers this year for the first time in his career, and you trade him. He actually outplayed the Bosa brothers. He came back. He's your spiritual. He's your leader, and you let him go. Why do you think the team's morale is down? Come on, man. It's especially against a division opponent like the Giants, where they lost to him last year twice. They lose to him twice again this year. I don't understand. Like I said, shout out to the defense for at least trying, but I don't think this is going to be the last of defensive players who want to be moved in the offseason. I think it's going to be I think the rebuild is coming, and it's really sad because I think this defense all put together could have done something very special this year.
Absolutely, because when I'm looking at the moves that they made, all I could think of is getting Michael Jordan in here to say this.
Stop it. Get some help.
Because you're not getting the right help. A second and third round pick for those two players definitely didn't improve this team, or at least we'll find out here in the upcoming draft and how it goes for years to come. But I still don't think it's going to be better than what you would have had with at least keeping one of those two players. I mean, moving one of those two made sense. I kind of get Montez Sweat to the Bears for the second round pick. I kind of understand that one.
Yeah.
I get that. And he signed the contract extension over there so he's going to be there for another 4 more years. But with Chase Young, to me, it didn't make much sense for that move. You should have kept him, especially with the numbers he was producing. He could have made a spark to this team that already is having issues on the offensive line that's hurting Sam Howell and giving up the amount of sacks that he's given. He's taken 50 sacks this year already. So, at this point, it's not looking good going into the offseason, especially for Riverboat Ron. I mean, even EB yesterday only putting up 19 points against the Giants team. Now, of course, the Giants do have a pretty good defense led by Kayvon Thibodeau, and you got Dexter Lawrence and all those players up there. And whenever Dexter Lawrence wasn't in the game, they were running the ball up the middle. You could see it more. Like the Commanders were running the ball up the middle more when Dexter Lawrence was not in the game yesterday, when he would have to take breathers for 2 and 3 plays after, being in there for quite some time. The Commanders were taking advantage of it in the first half. But then, once we got to the second half, and especially the fourth quarter when they ran away with it, I mean, the Commanders were staying in the game, but once the Giants caught wind of that and basically adjusted their game plan, you saw Dexter Lawrence in there more, or when he was out of the game in the second half, it was for shorter stretches, maybe for a play, 2 at max, but not 3 to 5 plays. It looked like he was getting winded in that first half, and the Commanders were taking advantage of it. And then once he got himself right in the second half, and they came together and they gelled, the Giants ran away with it in the third quarter. In the fourth quarter.
Well, that's the crazy part, Drew, when you think about it. Because I was thinking to myself, didn't he get traded? But then I realized it wasn't Dexter Lawrence who got traded. The Giants actually traded away. They actually traded away Leonard Williams. So think about that, and think about the conundrum. So you got 2 teams who traded away some of their best, who traded away their best linemen, and basically rebuilding. And for me, when I look at the Commanders this year, why are you trying to rebuild? I don't understand. And that's why it goes back to what I'm saying about. The ownership is sending a message to not only the coaches, but this group that we don't believe in you. And for them to go out there yesterday, I mean, I understand if it wasn't for the Sam Howell interceptions to Isaiah Simmons, it would have been a closer game. But the ownership is basically saying that we don't believe in you. And then no offense to Matty Johnson, I like Matty Johnson, but you're not a football guy. And I feel like that the ownership, people like Matty Johnson is like 2, 3, 4, 5% ownership. They're just sending him out there in a pawn. He's a pawn. He's not making any decisions. They're trying to satisfy the public. You understand what I'm saying? Like, they're going to gut this team. They're going to gut this team, and I think it's unfortunate. Especially now, you look at the wins against the Broncos, for example. Look at Broncos are excelling and things like that. They just don't show any belief in this football team. They're going to move this football team out of FedEx. They'll probably move them to Northern Virginia. They may move them to D.C. Hell, they may even move them to London. I'm serious. Like, I would not trust this ownership group. I'm serious. Because from what I saw yesterday, this team's morale is down. We'll talk about the Dallas game later. I think they can win that, but the morale yesterday was down. Something happened this week that team's morale is completely down. So shout out to the players who still fought their butts off.
Absolutely. Like I said, you brought up Saquon Barkley, and I pretty much brought up the play by Darius Slayton from Tommy DeVito as our highlights of the play of the game. Another highlight that I want to throw out there before we go to our next part of the show is you have to look at Isaiah Simmons' 54-yard interception return.
Yeah,
and that was basically put the icing on the cake. The Giants were up 24-19. And then with that 54-yard interception return, with the Randy Bullock kick, put him up 31-19. And Randy Bullock's been floating around out there for quite some time. It's good to see him find a home with the New York Giants and actually be somewhat productive this year towards the highlights of that team. So looking at things overall, I would say between what you brought up with Saquon Barkley and those 2 highlights, I would say those would be collectively our 3 highlights for the Burgundy Flex Review.
And think about that, Drew. The Commanders could have had an Isaiah Simmons for nothing. You could have put him on that linebacker group. You could have put him with a Chase Young. You could have made him a hybrid safety / linebacker. I mean, the Commanders to me had so many possibilities coming this year. All they had to do was play decent offense, which they're doing. I'm frustrated. I'm very frustrated about what I saw yesterday. Very frustrated.
Hey, you already know what's on my left arm, like the half sleeve on the arm. So you already know that I'm in agreement with you there. And it's definitely been a tough season. At this juncture of the year, and I wouldn't be surprised if the news came out later today or tomorrow, that Riverboat Ron is given his walking papers and they see what EB can do for the rest of the season. But You might wait till after Thanksgiving for that too, so they'll have an 11-day break.
And they can't do it just yet because it's so far in the week. And if they're going to do it, they're going to probably do it yesterday. They're going to probably do it today. But you do it on a Tuesday or Wednesday, man. That's just if they do it on Tuesday or Wednesday. To me, that's just at that point, it's personal and it's cruel.
Hey, watch the Commanders Black Friday sale be releasing Riverboat Ron the day after Thanksgiving.
About that, Jesus Christ.
That would be wild. I may have if that happens. I may have to have an impromptu Commanders Gridiron Report on Friday or Saturday to cover that.
You also need to bring up those highlights when we talked about Ron Rivera and Cam. Remember we had that discussion? This is about 3 years ago. It's so long ago. When
One of the first in-or-out sports debates.
Yeah, when we talked about will Riverboat Ron last, and I basically said no. That's wild.
It's definitely going to be interesting to see how things pan out over there for the Commanders. But guys, we got a couple comments. One of our new followers for Stopper Media, Constipated in Sin City, who was here last week. I love the name. And Mickey Delaney is here too and said, hi, Rob Johnson. And he said, sorry that I'm late. Well, it's all good, Mick. We appreciate you being here. Thank you all who are here and as well as in the comments. And Mick says, what up, Constipated? How are you? That's what was getting me last week. When we were having our show, Cole and I were having total football talk. Mick said, like, hi, Constipated, how are you? And I lost it just because that's when I figured out that somebody had a cool name such as Constipated in Sin City. And I never in my life heard anybody address someone as, hi, Constipated, how are you? I've never in my life in 36 years until last week. So it was great.
Eating those tacos in Vegas will do that to you probably, right?
It could. Let us know here in the comments, Constipated in Sin City, if that is the situation, because you know what Sin City is, you know what's happening, and so do we. Guys, we're going to take this into our first commercial break, and when we come back, we will take things into the Soldiers of the Week and talk about our MVPs from yesterday's game. We'll be back here shortly.
Commanders, where my soldiers, right side, Commanders, where my soldiers, left side.
Football, and more football, you say? Well, tune in to Total Football Talk. Join your hosts, Drew Willingham.
You were playing like a dumpster Pelican quarterback.
And Cole Johnson.
It sets up for possible play action. Did you hear that, Dak Prescott?
As they take you through all the paces, both on the field and in the boardroom, of Total Football Talk. Every Tuesday at
9 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Central.
Exclusively on the SHOWSTOPPER Media and the Comey Media Incorporated YouTube channel.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen. Hey, look. Hey, stop playing games. Y'all already know. Go ahead and toss him some Willie Bucks. Ain't nobody playing around. Hey, $ DWillie87. Go ahead, hit him up on the Cash App, and go ahead and give him some Willie Bucks. Look at Drew looking stoic, ladies and gentlemen. Stoic on that $10 bill. So go ahead, slide my man over some Willie Bucks, and we good. That's all I'm saying. We good. How about some Willie Bucks?
SHOWSTOPPER Media, where the struggle is real to be awesome.
If you're looking for a sports program that gives you the flavor.
Washington Commanders? Really?
This whole thing stinks to high heaven.
That pulls no punches.
Thuggish act by a thuggish actor.
That gives you some humor.
Praise everything LeBron does and never criticize it.
If you want a show that gives you good times, then this is that show. BS3 Network proudly presents.
I am Cole Johnson, and welcome to
Cole Sports with a Z. Every Friday on Patreon, and every Saturday on YouTube, Spreaker, and all other outlets.
Commanders, where my soldiers, right side, Commanders, where my soldiers, left side.
Welcome back from that commercial break, and we are here for today's special edition with our special guest, Robb Johnson, as we are back to discuss the remaining 4 segments that we have on this show. And with that being said, without further ado, let's take this into the Soldiers of the Week.
Where my soldiers, right side, Commanders. Where my soldiers, left side.
And here are the Soldiers of the Week, and this was Robb's selection for the Soldiers of the Week, and I actually agree with them, so I'm going to roll with them as well here too. And we have David Mayo at the top of the pack right there with 5 tackles and 2 sacks. Robb, talk about his impact there for the Commanders' defense there as you have him there for the first on your list.
I think his ability to get sacks, his ability to control the field. You know, when you're a linebacker, and again, when you don't have those same guys on the defensive line. I mean, of course, you got Payne. You got the other great defensive lineman that's there as well from Alabama. It's kind of hard for you to maneuver and do different things, but his play has been very good. I like the way he was able to get in the backfield. Of course, Saquon Barkley had 83 yards on the ground, but he was able to get back there and make some plays. Again, get 2 sacks on the linebacker position, which is not easy, especially when you're playing certain techniques and things like that. I think that he did a good job in just playing his game and doing his job. That's the main thing right now for Commanders, doing your job. And he did his job. Unfortunately, other guys didn't do their job.
Absolutely. I mean, I can't say anything better than that when it came to the amount of stats that this guy put up yesterday's game. I mean, with those 5 tackles and 2 assists, I mean, he was definitely a leading charge there for the Commanders. I mean, it's right here, 5 tackles, 2 sacks. I mean, I said assists, but I meant to say sacks. But yeah, he definitely was a driving force there. And then you have Saquon Barkley, second with 14 carries, 83 yards, 4 receptions, 57 yards, 2 receiving touchdowns. We talked about him earlier on in the show. How much of an impact do you think that was for Tommy DeVito in his performance in yesterday's game?
It was huge, but you also have to look at if Saquon Barkley wasn't there blocking for him, how many sacks would DeVito have gone down with? Because that's the problem a lot of times. We look at running backs and we say these guys are very good when it comes to running the ball, catching, and making spectacular plays in the open field. But one thing that Saquon Barkley does is he blocks for his quarterback. You have to be able to block for your quarterback, and that's what happens a lot of times. These guys come into the league from college, and they're running these straight RPOs, and they're not able to block for the quarterback. So at the times where he was able to block, because you have to look, the offensive line for the Giants isn't very good right now, okay? So when you have a guy that's able to get some blocks, even though they gave up 9 sacks, the sack count could have been so much worse, and you're probably looking at injury. And look at Daniel Jones. Look at Tyrod Taylor. They suffered injuries for a reason. So Saquon Barkley's impact of being able to just at least get some blocks, I think, escaped DeVito from injury. But if Saquon Barkley wasn't in that game yesterday, I can guarantee you that DeVito would have had an injury and they probably would have been out the game. The Giants would have been up the wall because, that's how critical he is, Saquon Barkley, when it comes to being able to bail his quarterback out. And again, for the Giants to not pay that man in the offseason is completely criminal.
No, you're absolutely right. And he'll get his pay at some point. But when it comes to this right here, the only way they could have kept Tommy DeVito from not having 9 sacks yesterday is if they didn't run Saquon at all and he spent more time blocking, and he would have had some less sacks. But then you wouldn't have had the production that you would have had, and you would have probably lost that game. So either way, it's give and take. They've got some issues there on the offensive line. So do the Commanders, back and forth. As that's the reason why they're the bottom 2 teams in the NFC East right now, is because they need to address those issues on the offensive line, as we'll discuss more with our next segment here in a minute. But right here, when I look at that, and then I look at the third person on this list, you have Kayvon Thibodeau, 3 tackles, 2 sacks. Very similar, minus 2 tackles from what David Mayo had on the Commanders side. How big of an impact, along with Dexter Lawrence, do you think that they made on that Giants defense yesterday?
Pressures. A lot of times, Drew, people will look at the sack numbers. He's got 10.5, which is still impressive. Coming out of Oregon, where, a lot of times, it used to be Oregon was more finesse team. Oregon over the last 2 or 3 years has become a very hard-nosed. You look at the uniforms, things like that. Oh, Oregon, they're fancy. No, Oregon over the last 2 or 3 years has gotten to be very hard-nosed. Now you got Dan Lanning there, former SEC coach. They're bringing the pressure. They're bringing a lot of the heat. So you have these guys now who are physical coming out of the Pac-12, and Kayvon Thibodeau is just a very physical player. And when you look at Sam Howell yesterday, 31-45, 255, a touchdown, 3 picks. It was because he was pressured. It was because they were physical with him. And Kayvon Thibodeau was the one who was the engineer of that. When you look at the touchdown run where the fight happened, it's because Kayvon Thibodeau was one of the guys who initiated, look, we're going to be tough. You know, they weren't so tough last week, but they were playing a different team. But I also think that when they played last week, Dallas had a different mindset. As I continue to say, when you come in with a team who's kind of pissed off at their ownership, they're mad about something that we don't know about. You know, a guy like Kayvon Thibodeau, when you're not focused, he's going to take advantage of that. He took advantage of that this week. He took advantage of the bad offensive line play. He took advantage of the fact that they could not block him. He was able to diagnose what the snap count was, etc. It was just a bad day for Washington in that sense, but you got to give Thibodeau credit. He played his butt off.
He did. And we actually have some comments that I want to address. And Ike says DeVito should be on that list.
He was sacked 9 times, Ike. And DeVito is a type of player where I think he was better coming out of college than we expected. It's just that he's coming out of Illinois. You know, he was at Syracuse, but he only had 15 touchdowns, 4 interceptions last year. But there were so many other elements that made him good yesterday. And combined with the Commanders' defense not being focused, I mean, and if you look at it, that was still a 6-point game. That was still a close game going to the last minute. So you got to give it to a guy like Kayvon Thibodeau. You got to give it to a guy like Isaiah Simmons. You got to look at that Giants defense because they were the ones who caused 3 interceptions. And at the end of the day, DeVito, like Sam Howell at times, still holds on to the ball way too long. If you guys, Giants fans, if you look back at what Tyrod Taylor did, with that same porous offensive line, he was able to get the ball out quickly. Why? Because he's more of a professional quarterback. You have to learn. And as these guys get older, they'll learn more. But right now, they hold on to the ball way too long, trying to make the spectacular play instead of making the play.
Well said. Well said. I mean, and the biggest factor, and then you let it off with that too, was the fact that he had 9 sacks. Now, you can credit that more towards the offensive line and in the scheme and how the pressure was from the Commanders side. And they, you know, the sad part is we just talked about earlier about the fact they didn't have Chase Young or Montez Sweat, and they still sacked the quarterback 9 times. And that attributes to the offensive line. But, I mean, when you look at those 9 sacks, and we're watching the game yesterday, most of them he couldn't even get out the way for.
No.
So I can't really blame DeVito for that as much as I blame the offensive line. But considering the fact that the kid took 9 sacks and he only had 8 incompletions. He had 9 sacks and only – how often do we see a quarterback with only 8 incompletions, throwing 3 touchdowns, no picks, but he was sacked 9 times?
Very rare.
That's very rare. And given a third-string quarterback and a rookie at that. So –
Are we sure? Are we sure he's not better than Daniel Jones?
He may be. He may be. But I think it gives a lot more credit to Brian Daboll for what he's getting out of the third-string quarterback when he can't even get that out of his first-string quarterback. And we saw a similar thing in San Francisco last year with Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy was the third-string quarterback behind Jimmy Garoppolo and Trey Lance, and vice versa when it was Trey Lance and then Jimmy Garoppolo. I mean, he was the third option, and look at what happened there. You know, DeVito's got the option now for the rest of the season to showcase if he could put up numbers like that. 18 of 26 for over 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. Well, no, 246 yards, my bad. 246 yards and 3 touchdowns, but still only have 8 completions on those 26 attempts. If he could do that consistently for the remainder of this season, I wouldn't be surprised if he gets similar to Brock Purdy treatment next year for New York as far as giving the keys to the starting quarterback position. Not saying that he's going to give them the success that the 49ers have been experiencing like with what Brock Purdy has been. But with DeVito here, I know I've been mocking him the past couple of weeks saying he's the long-lost relative of Danny DeVito and doesn't deserve his name of Tommy. That needs to be called Tony. He needs to be out there on the streets being a Tony DeVito. But no, he is actually out there doing things. If he can stay consistent and not just against a divisional opponent, I would have to say he deserves the opportunity to at least compete in training camp next year.
Do you know that the Giants can possibly win out?
They can with the schedule they have. You think so?
Patriots at home, Packers at home on Monday Night Football, the Saints, who has proven nothing, the Eagles twice and the Rams once at home. The reason people will look at me crazy, why do you think the Eagles? I'm telling you guys right now, that Giants defense is better than you think. And if the Commanders ran up and down the field on the Eagles like that, I think that the Giants could possibly run up and down the field. I'm not saying they are. I'm just saying that don't be shocked if by week 18 on January 7th, the Giants have 8 wins. Just don't be shocked. But the problem is with the Giants is that now you're in a really big pickle because you owe Daniel Jones a lot of money. And so how are you going to get up out of that? So when it comes to Ike and it comes to Tommy DeVito, if he puts up a good performance next week, I'll definitely give him a lot more credit.
A lot of those games I can agree with you on, except for maybe one, if not 2 of them. And one of those being, I think they might split with the Eagles. It's going to be tough to beat them twice, especially in 2 out of the last 3 weeks of the season when the Eagles are going to be charging up, getting ready for that playoff run, because the way they're playing, they're nothing short of what they were last year, and it looked like they built on what they had accomplished last year in the offseason.
I'll agree. But, I'll agree with you on that, Drew, but I will also give you this caveat as well. The thing is that the Eagles, they haven't gotten started yet, in my opinion. But if they don't get started, here's the problem. And I go all the way back to week 2. And that's what I'm saying. Our national media is always so focused on Dallas that don't nobody want to talk about nobody else, which is sad. You go back to week 2, Daniel Jones was 35 of 54 for 316 yards and 3 touchdowns against this Eagles secondary. I don't think Mac Jones is better than Dan DeVito right now, Tom DeVito right now.
Nope. Yep. I'll give you that one. That's why I didn't say the Patriots game.
That's what I'm saying. This offense looks better than this looked in a very long time. And it may be the defenses. I don't know. But again, if you go back, people go back to the Dallas game. They could have put up more points against Dallas. They put up 17. So I'm just saying, I mean, people have got to look deeper than the box score. I think they got something with Tommy DeVito. I think they really do.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with that. The 2 games that I think that they could potentially lose within that stretch would be, I think they're going to split to the Eagles in one of them. They play them 2 out of the last 3 weeks, and with them getting hotter towards the end of the year, I feel like the Giants have a chance of losing to them. And I also feel like there's a decent chance that on New Year's Eve that they lose to the Rams. I mean, look at what the Rams did yesterday against the Seahawks. I mean, the Seahawks were a pretty good team coming into this year, and they've been making some noise. You have to look at what they did yesterday.
Let's be honest about the Seahawks, man. The Seahawks I'm not going to say they're overrated, but the Seahawks to me, man, I just don't see them. Because to me, there's no reason Washington should have lost to them last week. I'm not saying they're completely overrated, man, but sooner or later, you know, the midnight train on Geno Smith's going to hit. Sooner or later. It's been a nice ride. But we see what Russ is doing in Denver. So sooner or later, that midnight oil is going to run out.
No, I agree with that. I think that's a good call, and we'll have to see how things pan out for the rest of the season. But with that being said, let's go and take it into our next segment, the Showstopper, and see what we got in store for that one.
I off the way that this sound, they turn up as soon as they feet the ground. I am not playing around. I hit them, I bet that they feeling me now.
And here with the Showstopper, you know, what adjustments should the Commanders make to improve from week 11? You know, with this topic right here, you know, going into the Cowboys game, what should they do to improve before they head to that game?
Man, I'm so frustrated right now because you talk about the adjustment. You can't adjust ownership. You can't adjust culture. You can't adjust. See, man, I started getting worried in the preseason when they beat Baltimore and it was like a celebration of life. That's when I really started getting worried because I'm just like, man, it feels like the same old Commanders. And the adjustment they're going to have to make is this. They're going to have to be tougher. They're going to have to be resilient. They're going to have to back their talk up, because when they beat Dallas last year in that final game, it was like, yeah, we did it. We beat Dallas. Yes. And I'm just like, where was this against Cleveland? You could have made the playoffs. So they're going to be up for this game because they always are up for Dallas. If you look at even years when Dallas won the Super Bowls, Washington beat them. Washington, since they won the Super Bowl, has not been that team that they just haven't been that team that stays focused for an entire season. So toughness, they got to be gritty. They got to run the ball, man. You got Brian Robinson Jr. Run the ball. You have a bevy of wide receivers. I'm going to say, and I'm going to look at this from yesterday, and this continues to piss me off more and more. Drew, anytime Terry McLaurin against that secondary where CeeDee Lamb absolutely tortured, and I'm not going to sit here and say that CeeDee Lamb is heights above Terry McLaurin, because I don't believe that in my heart. I believe that Terry McLaurin is a top 10 wide receiver, hell, at times a top 5 wide receiver. Anytime he only gets 7 targets for 5 carries, that's criminal. And it's sad because Eric Bieniemy has to continue to prove that he's a real coach and he's this and that when he's got 2 Super Bowl championships. And that's more on the NFL and that's more on our national media, but I'll leave that for another day. Run the football. Brian Robinson Jr. said yesterday, 70 carries, 73 yards. A long of 18. So I'm sorry. He had 17 carries for 73 yards. Run the football, be physical, stop thinking about the noise going on in the back. But I don't know how that's going to happen, Drew, because I feel like there's already rumors in the building. So if you're a player or you're a coach, you already know that the ownership doesn't like you or wants you out or wants to completely erase Daniel Snyder's tenure. Like, what are you supposed to do? This is what worried me. This is what absolutely worried me when they hired Eric Bieniemy. I feel like Daniel Snyder did it to spite the rest of the owners in the NFL. And now the man could possibly lose his job. And that bothers me because, like I said, Sam Howell has had a decent year. So you got to run the football. You got to be physical. You have to match Dallas's physicality. Because ever since the San Francisco game, they've been physical. The Carolina Panthers, I don't know if you saw any of the game yesterday, Drew. I was able to catch a little bit of it. Carolina tried to punk Dallas yesterday. You know what Dallas said? They punched him right back in the mouth. That wasn't happening week 1. So if the Washington thinks they're just going to come in Dallas and punk them, this is a different Dallas team since that San Francisco team. They've been pretty pissed off since then. So I honestly, Drew, when it comes to adjustments, they just have to go in there again, run the football, be physical, and let the noise stay where the noise is. Because this is going to be a difficult game.
I'll agree with all that and add one more thing. The only other thing that I would say that they need to do different would be Sam Howell needs to be smarter when throwing the ball away. Because 2 of those 3 interceptions that he threw yesterday, he was trying to get the ball and throw it out of bounds. And, so that way it was a no play. Well, you know what I'm saying, but incomplete pass, go to the next down. But, that last lame duck pass that he threw, he wasn't even hit. Like his arm wasn't hit. The ball wasn't tipped. And he threw that lame duck up there. That lame duck that was that 54-yard interception return. So when I look at that was probably one of the defining moments for me, along with everything else that you said. That moment put the icing on the cake, because if that was your only interception, that'd be one thing. But you had 2 of your 3 looking that way, and the other one was just you threw it into bad coverage. So looking at that, everything that you said, along with adding the factor if he needs to be smarter with the football, he's got 18 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. Like you said, 19 and 13 overall if you add that game from last year from the Cowboys game. He's got impressive yardage, passing yards, but he needs to do a better job of making those decisions, because you have more touchdowns than interceptions, which shows that you're making better decisions overall than bad decisions. But those numbers are flirting with getting closer to the good decisions that you're making for the touchdowns. And you don't want to have that on your resume going into the offseason with the remaining games in the year. You need to get smarter with the football. You cannot be throwing 1 touchdown and 3 interceptions in these games and expect to be anywhere to winning.
I think he actually has 19 and 13, I believe.
Yeah, 19 and 13 for for his career. 19 and 13.
My fault. Yeah.
He had 1 touchdown and 1 interception last year against the Cowboys in Week 18. And he had 18 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, sacked 51 times already this year.
Let me ask you something, Drew. And I believe that this happened yesterday, and I don't care what Commanders say. I don't care what news reports say. That man was concussed because that last pass he threw, it did not look right. If you really look at him, and the back of his head hit the ground, I believe it was in the 4th quarter. I believe Sam Howell had a mild concussion to a concussion. Even
earlier than that, when he was taken out of bounds and the fight ensued. Remember that?
Yes.
And he was on the ground for a minute. Yeah, that too.
And in my opinion, one thing that he cannot do on Thursday, hero ball. And when I'm not talking about throwing the ball up in the air, I'm talking about trying to take on defenders. You don't want to do that because, like I told you, I think some of these guys still remember that last game from the season and a lot of the conversations that were had, a lot of the trash talk about Dak Prescott, a lot of the trash talk about the defense. Oh, this. And I'm like, guys, the Commanders won. They won the game. And, the Eagles were pretty much beating that. We're going to beat the Giants regardless. The Giants had in their second string. But that game catapulted Sam Howell into starting position. So everything could come full circle. He could either elevate himself or he could doom himself. But he can't play hero ball. Play within the system. Run the football. They've got decent running backs. Use some strategy. Use play action. Do some stunts on defense. But if they do what they did yesterday, it's not going to be pretty. And Sam Howell cannot be out there trying to just run people over. That's cannot be the game plan because he will be out the game. We'll see Jacoby Brissett.
And it'll be interesting if that situation happens. But we'll talk more about that with the Dallas Cowboys matchup here in just a minute. Let's take it to our last quick commercial break before we head into our last 2 segments.
Commanders, where my soldiers, right side. Commanders, where my soldiers, left side.
Everything Boston. I love you morons. New Kids on the Block, New Edition, dear whatever the law firm is. Sincerely, the U.S. Supreme Court. Ben Affleck, Matt Damon, go yourself again. Jason Whitlock.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen. Hey, look. Hey, stop playing games. Y'all already know. Go ahead and toss him some Willie Bucks. Ain't nobody playing around. Hey, $ DWillie87. Go ahead, hit him up on the Cash App, and go ahead and give him some Willie Bucks. Look at Drew looking stoic, ladies and gentlemen. Stoic on that $10 bill. So go ahead, slide my man over some Willie Bucks, and we good. That's all I'm saying. We good. How about some Willie Bucks?
Sertoba Media, where the struggle is real to be awesome.
Oh, yes. The tradition, the pageantry, the spectacle, the history, the slut. Wait. I gotta rep my brother's stuff right. All my DMV soldiers, stand up! And welcome to the Commanders Gridiron Report. You want your Commanders to be repped right? Well, D. Willie is your man. Commanders Gridiron Report. Every Monday at 3:05 p.m. Eastern, 2:05 p.m. Central. Exclusively on the Sertoba Media YouTube channel. Music by J.KUL.
Where my soldiers, right side. Commanders, where my soldiers, left side.
Sertoba Media, where the struggle is real to be awesome.
Commanders, where my soldiers, right side. Commanders, where my soldiers, left side.
And welcome back from that commercial break. And we have 2 final segments to bring you. And with that being said, let's go and take this into the opponent of the week and see who we've got this week for the Commanders.
Look how we step. Who we got next? Step on the right, step on the left. Who do we rep?
And here for the opponent of the week, the Washington Commanders, 4-7 overall record, traveled to Dallas to take on the second place in the NFC East, Dallas Cowboys at 7-3. Rob, you've alluded to certain things, throughout the previous segments, but to sum it all up, coming into this matchup, Thanksgiving, 4:30 p.m. Eastern time. We talked about what they need to do to improve, but how do they execute it this Thursday against the Cowboys?
They're going to have to hope that Dallas comes into this game not focused and doesn't remember what happened the last time they played. They're going to have to make sure that, again, no hero ball. They're going to have to make sure that they get their weapons involved. To me, Drew, even though the offensive line is not great, you have some of the better weapons on your offensive team. And I will say this as well, that Logan Thomas, I believe, will have a big impact on Thursday. I think that he'll go off for 200 yards. No. Do I think maybe 100? Yes. The Cowboys are a little susceptible to giving up yards to tight ends. Leighton Vander Esch is out. Now you have Marquise Bell, who is at the linebacker position, who is a hybrid safety. So definitely I believe that they could take advantage of Dallas in the middle of the field. Carolina, definitely, if you look at the game yesterday, Adam Thielen took advantage of them in some situations. The problem is, Drew, is that they cannot – one thing they can't do, they have to make sure that when they get the third down, it is 3rd and 2, 3rd and 1. If you're getting the third down and you're at 3rd and 12 or 3rd and 10 or 3rd and 9, that's going to be the problem. They have to treat first and second down so critical. That means not coming out, not being cute on first and second down. Take advantage of your opportunities. Take what you can get and run the football, because you don't want to get in 3rd and long. Michael Parsons had his best game yesterday with 2.5 sacks of the year. He heard the noise. They have like 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 other rushers that get to the ball. They get to the quarterback. This Commanders team, I've seen them play well all year against certain teams. I've seen them put up points. I've seen them be focused. What's Sam Howell's mindset going to be coming in this game? Is he planning to come in here and win the game? Was he playing for his job? Is Eric Bieniemy coming here playing for his job? Was he trying to play for the game, trying to win the game? Because Ron Rivera at times can be a very positive figure. And at other times, Drew, I'm just going to be very honest with you. That man can be very freaking depressing.
Yeah.
And you look at his mannerisms, you see what's going on with him. Again, I will say it again. You know that he knows something that a lot of people out there don't know. There's something going on behind the scenes right now that is just nasty. Because the way they came out yesterday, they come out there on Thursday doing that. They're gonna have to do replays like they did back in the day for that Jets and Raiders game during the broadcast. Because everybody remembers that Sunday night game when Dallas played Washington, damn near put up 60 points. We don't want that tomorrow. We don't want that Thursday. We want a good game. We want a good game. No matter what my team status is, we want a good game on Thanksgiving.
Now, speaking of, before I give my quick take, who do you think, you don't have to give a score, but who do you think, with everything you just said, comes out with the victory in this Thursday's contest?
Can I give a 50-50, please? Because honestly,
you want there to be a tie? You think it's going to be a tie? 13-13 tie?
Well, I'm going to give the answer here, basically. If Washington comes out focused and they run the ball, don't try to play hero ball, I think that they can at least keep this thing close. I think that either it will be Dallas winning 27-21. I'm sorry, 27-21, maybe 33-21. But if Riverboat Ron and this team is like, you know what, screw it, we just don't care, we could have a Dolphins-Broncos situation. Because, like I said, there was a lot of things said after that game last year. And there are a lot of revengeful coaches this year for some reason. Everybody's mad. Like, everybody wants revenge. Like, everybody wants to, go back and, that's why I put that thing on my story, Rob Johnson Media, about revenge, because that's what I think Dallas wants. But Washington, if they can come out and do certain things and just play within themselves and believe in themselves, this should be a close game. I don't want to see a blowout. Drew, this Washington franchise is a historic franchise. A lot of people, these young pups coming up now, they don't realize just how important Washington was coming up in the 80s, the 90s, etc. This was the creme de la creme franchise. They were up there with Dallas, probably even higher than Dallas. And it hurts me because I remember RFK Stadium. I remember them beating the Lions to go to the Super Bowl. This franchise is a great franchise. And it's been it's been stepped on, pissed on, whatever. And it's sad to me because this is a great franchise, the Burgundy and Gold. And for God's sake, stop wearing the black uniforms. For God's sake, I'm so freaking sick and tired of Washington wearing these black uniforms. When you played against the Chicago Bears, you got beat by 20. And I think, Drew, that's where all this stuff from ownership started. Remember, they don't lose Chicago, those trades never happen. Stop wearing the black uniforms. You're not the Washington Steelers. Go ahead, Drew. I'm pissed off right now.
No, you threw some great points up there, Rob, and I don't disagree with any of that. The only thing that I'm concerned about is in the Cowboys' previous games, of course, they responded to the Panthers this past weekend, 133-10. Mollywopped the Giants 49-17. Of course, had a close one with the Eagles, as of course the Commanders did this year in that November 5th contest, 28-23, as they lost by 5. But they mollywopped on the Rams right before that. 3 out of their last 4 games they've won, and decisively. And before that they had beat the Chargers 20-17, but got embarrassed by the 49ers 42-10. But since that 49ers game, they've turned it around. I mean, they've been either winning, or if they've lost, which in that one game that I mentioned that they lost, they only lost by 5 points to the Eagles. So it seems like the Cowboys have been turning things around since that 49er matchup. And they needed to, because of what's happened in the past couple of years in the playoffs when they faced the 49ers. And then, getting hit this year, 42-10 in that loss, they've had to either make some bounce back moves, because if they didn't, they wouldn't be where they're at in 7-3 right now, in second place, and still at least gunning for the top of the division, if not a good wild card seed. So going into this game, the Cowboys are for real, and they're clicking on the cylinders they need to be clicking on at this point in the year to be relevant and to be successful and get to a playoff berth. The Commanders, I'm afraid that they're going to go in there very similar to what you were talking about with, not doing the things they need to with that offensive line, not establishing the run, which they've had troubles with all year long. We saw more, even though we were talking on their running game earlier in the show. He had better production, that being Brian Robinson, than he did in many weeks. He was averaging 30 to 35 yards a game for the past 4 to 6 weeks. Yeah. It's been terrible. So even though we were saying that it was trash how he was playing this week, it's not even as bad as he's been playing leading up to this. So you need to do even better than what you did this past week. You need to be getting anywhere between 75 and 95 yards if you want to have a chance of beating this Cowboys team. And what they've got up front on their defensive line in comparison to what the Commanders have on their offensive line, it's a mismatch. The Cowboys' defensive line is much better than the Commanders' offensive line, and it's a matchup that I'm not looking forward to seeing unless they can step it up. The Commanders have made multiple moves on this offensive line this year to try to mix it up to get some type of established offensive line there. It just hasn't worked out when you're giving up 51 sacks. Not as bad as in week 3 when you gave up 9 sacks to the Buffalo Bills, but you've still given up 51 sacks all year long. I'm worried that in this game, if the Cowboys, if the mood that they're at and the momentum that they're at this year, somebody's going to get hurt on this Commanders team this week. And I'm afraid because they're on the 3-day break going up to this Thanksgiving game. Not much of a break at all when you've got to cram in the preparation for this Thanksgiving game. And I feel like it's going to be a bit too much. You haven't even had a bye week yet. You haven't had a break. So you're going to be asking a lot. This is going to be the second time this year they've had a Thursday night game, working on 3 days rest pretty much, or 3 days of preparation. It's a lot. So with that being said, we've brought up quite a bit with that. What do you got for your last part of it?
That's what I'm saying real quick. You brought up something, Drew, and I didn't even think about it. When you talk about Buffalo and the 9 sacks, Von Miller didn't even play in that game.
Yeah.
Von Miller didn't even play in that game. And when you look back at that game, Drew, like I said, when you look back at that game, those were some of their marquee games of the year. When you think about it, or you go back to September, they beat the Cardinals, they beat the Broncos. Everybody's thinking, here we go, 37-3. And then they go against the Eagles, they only lose by 3. And they're like, here we go, the Bears. So then you're looking at yesterday's game, like, here we go. The Giants. And then you think to yourself, it's a short week. Dallas, I mean, they're missing Trayvon Diggs, but the way Deron Bland is picking people off right now, I mean, and I told people that he was good, but nobody wanted to listen. I said that this guy was still legitimate. I don't know, man. Like, I don't know, man. And like I said, this has nothing to do with me being a fan, none of that, because you got to remember, I'm the guy who picked the Commanders to go to the playoffs last year. I said that they've kept this core together. They'd be a Super Bowl team. This ownership has come in and completely gutted this franchise. Again, you know, I'm seeing the same crap I'm seeing when Daniel Snyder was there. And that's what bothers me. Like, I know it has to bother you.
Oh, yeah, it does.
We're seeing the same rumors. We're seeing the same stuff. Nothing's changed. And that's the problem. And
I don't think we have any underground sex clubs going over there like they had before, but, you know, I don't think we have anything going on quite that bad.
Trust me when I tell you, that stuff ain't going nowhere in the NFL. I don't care if it's Daniel Snyder. I don't care if it's Hugh Hefner. I don't care if it's Preacher Bo. That stuff don't go nowhere. Like Daniel Snyder got way too much criticism because, in my opinion, look what some of the players he drafted. He drafted Sean Taylor. Who's in your opening credits. He drafted a lot of really good players. The Washington Commanders have been better than what people said over the years. I mean, hell, go back to the Buccaneers. Go back when they played the Buccaneers in the playoffs. Up 13-0. I don't mean to bring scars up. They were up 13-0. Okay. And even before Daniel Snyder, in 96-97, weren't the Commanders 7-1? And they should have been in the playoffs? So I think there's a lot of scapegoats right now. I heard, remember, Drew, in the offseason, we heard that, you know, when this new ownership group comes in, everybody was on social media, Facebooks, Instagram. It's a new energy. Big, you know how people talk about all that big stupid shit. I'm sorry, all that big stupid stuff. Talking about big energy. Like, we got the Commanders, we're sold out.
I know which ones you're talking about.
So my thing is, and I don't know if you found that meme I did on my Rob Johnson Entertainment when I said the heist of the century. Basically, they gave this man $6 billion to walk away, and we're realizing that it really all wasn't on him.
I'll at least admit that I drank some of that Kool-Aid that you brought up. I was excited because Magic Johnson and what he had done in other leagues and the impact that he has made as an owner. I drank some of that Kool-Aid, okay? So I will at least sit here and bend the knee when it comes to that. Now, I didn't take it to the level of some of our other colleagues out there who cover this team, who've taken it on like Facebook and Twitter in their own, you know, couch sessions or whatever that you want to throw out there. Whatever the case may be, I have not been a part of that elite group when it comes to those people you speak of. I will at least admit that I was excited for the ownership change and for bringing in Magic Johnson, and that it could be a momentum change and a shift into positive outcomes for this team. And it would take more than just 1 year. I think before we throw the ownership team completely under the bus, we should give it a couple years, 2 to 3 years. Let them change the name, because they're probably going to change the name of the team. And let's see how things shift before we completely throw them under the bus. But I'm with you. I'm hearing you on it. I drank the Kool-Aid too soon, but I will at least say let's give him a little bit more time before we throw him under the bus.
That's the problem. Daniel Snyder, what was his central focus in life? What was his central focus?
Keeping the name. Keeping the name.
Yeah, and listen, he even changed the name. But here's the problem with that. I see people walking all around with I'm just gonna say that I don't care. I see people walking around with Redskins gear on all the time. And that's the first time I've said the word Redskins in 4 years. I haven't said it because I want to be respectful. So I see people wearing it, but it's like people like change name back. And then you look at Josh Harris, he owns like 2 or 3 other teams. His focus really isn't on Washington. That's my problem. And I think that's what people are not understanding. So they're putting Magic Johnson out there as, oh, he's the owner. No. That's the thing about Magic Johnson. People understand, Drew. When Magic Johnson gets frustrated, guess what he does? He walks away. He walks away. And it's documented through the Lakers, he walks away. So that's what I'm saying to you. It's like, I see disaster because how do you trade away Chase Young? Listen, I don't have the stats in front of me, but when Chase Young plays against the Cowboys, it's ugly. They've blown them out every time. When he doesn't play, it is ugly.
And if the Cowboys make it to the playoffs and face the 49ers, it's going to be just as bad, if not worse, than last year.
Because that's what Chase Young is. He's the Cowboys killer. When you trade away the Cowboys killer, who I deem him, he should trademark that, by the way, and give me some credit. When the Cowboys killer gets traded away, well, I mean, come on. They're not making rational decisions, and they're already off to a bad start. I don't know, man.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see how things pan out in this Cowboys game. We danced around that and also, went a little bit further with this ownership tenure that we currently have there. But Ike says Cowboys by 23. Robb's hoping for the best for a tie. I joked and said a 13-13 tie. I think the Cowboys are going to win this game. I hope I'm wrong. But I'm just going to go ahead and mentally prepare myself for it so that way when it happens, it's not as big of a disappointment as it hasn't been in some of these other games that we've seen this season. But with that being said, before we go a little bit too further, let's go and take this into the final drive where we give our final take of the show here for episode 12.
We bet on ourselves, so what you expect? A diehard fan never live with regret. Yes, sir.
And here for the final drive, we basically danced around a bunch of different things throughout this episode when it came to Week 11's recap, the Week 12 preview with what we had for Thanksgiving against the Cowboys being the Commanders, gone into the remaining part of the schedule, talked about the ownership. When it comes to everything we talked in a whole, and think about like basically the final word of the In or Out Sports debate, what is there that you want to add on to everything that you've discussed or touch up on? But also at the end of that, make sure that you let the fans know here for Sartoba Media where they can find you and your great work that you do on a regular basis for yourself there, Rob.
Well, see, Drew, here's the problem, man. Today I was hoping that we came on today, we just strictly stuck to everything, the topic of, that we were going on with. But here's the problem. With everything that's going on right now with this team, we had to include different things because there's so many elements. It's not just one thing in one box. This is a whole 100 boxes. This is 1,000 boxes. And my final word today is that I feel that the Commanders players and the coaching staff, including Eric Bieniemy, knows they're probably not going to be here at the end of the season. I think that this ownership group wants to get rid of everything that has to do with Daniel Snyder. And the rumors are heating up, Drew. The rumors are heating up that the Washington Commanders will be bringing in Bill Belichick. So that's my final word. I think that sooner or later here, we're going to find out in the offseason that Bill Belichick's going to be the next head coach of this football team. And, I mean, if you look at Magic Johnson, if you look at Josh Harris, they're about bringing in experience. They're about bringing in splash. And I don't know, man. I'm frustrated because, like I said before, this is a great franchise. This franchise deserves better, and people fell for the okie doke.
It's gonna be
and let me say this as well. You know what's funny about this?
What's that?
Remember when they brought in Lombardi back in the day? It feels
Yep.
like the same thing all over again.
You stole the words right out of my mouth because that was literally about what I was about to say. But great way to end that, Rob, because you had brought that up earlier in the show about the trade for Bill Belichick potentially happening. And there's been speculation of that throughout the past couple months. And with that being said, it did make me feel when you said that kind of like how things would have been if we were alive during that time to experience the Vince Lombardi era for the Washington, formerly known as the Redskins, I'll say now. But when it comes to that tenure, he was there for a short period of time, but he made an impact on that team, though. I mean, I hope that Belichick doesn't come here and, and basically checks out in a short period of time. Hopefully he's good with his health and everything, which nowadays with the standards of healthcare, you have a better understanding of where you're at with your health. And he probably gets checkups regular because of the age that he's at. But when you talked about that, it made me think about the trade from Oakland to Tampa Bay for John Gruden. And Tampa Bay traded their 2002 and 2003 first-round picks with the 2002 and 2004 second-round picks and $8 million cash. What if those moves for Montez Sweat and Chase Young, those second and third-round picks, come into play with this trade potentially happen? What if this move that was made for Montez Sweat and Chase Young to get out of town and to establish those picks was to help make that trade possible? We will definitely have a lot more firepower to come back with this in the next 2 to 5 years and talk about how bad of a move that it was, or potentially a great move, because in Vince Lombardi's tenure, he was there for a short period of time and they didn't get what they thought they should have in the short realm of it. But when you look at the overall picture, the fact that they made a Super Bowl appearance a couple of years later with George Allen, and that team was built in the foundation was built based on what Vince Lombardi brought in that short period of time. If that happens based on Bill Belichick coming here, I will say it's a great move. However, the difference between Lombardi and Belichick is Lombardi came to the Redskins at that time after establishing a great team in Green Bay and had recently had success winning Super Bowls with them before he came to the Redskins. Belichick, it will be 5 years by the time we get to next season since he last won, and he had to have Tom Brady. Well, no, it's been 5 years now. It was 2018. So it would have been 5 years already now since he's last won a Super Bowl. He hasn't done it without Tom Brady, and he hasn't had the success that he had in those 2 decades since Tom Brady left New England. So many things we could say there, but when it comes to the final drive and going into week 12, we brought a lot of things throughout this show. Again, talking about the recap of last week, the preview for this week. Hope everyone out there has a safe Thanksgiving. And thank you all for tuning in to everything on Sartoba Media here. You can definitely find Robb on his platforms with Robb Johnson Media, the Robb Johnson Entertainment, which I love to see those shorts you post on there, because the one got me not too long ago where you got out from work and you had told him off, and you get into the car, and all of a sudden you go to start the car, and the mother father wouldn't start. That one was probably one of my favorite ones out of all of them, but has a lot of great stuff. Definitely check out his page on Instagram and all the other places where you can find shorts and videos. Definitely his work with Legacymaker Sports Network, the New Kent, Charles City County Chronicle. You can check out his articles there as well. But here, for those of you checking out Sartoba Media, the year it's been, we're almost mother, father, and died, okay? And now we're here in almost Thanksgiving, and to what things have grown into with this. I couldn't do it without you, with the people that are watching now, the people that watch syndicated, those of you who like, share, and subscribe it. We wouldn't have gone from 14 subscribers in June to 1.2 thousand on YouTube without you, and 1.1K on TikTok without you. So all of you out there, from the participants, from the fans, those of you like, sharing, and subscribing, thank you very much for tuning into this episode. Tomorrow with Total Football Talk with myself and Kyle Nash, who will be subbing in for Cole Johnson tomorrow, as Cole will be on the road traveling for the holidays. We'll have our 3-hour show from 9 a.m. tomorrow to noon on Sartoba Media and Comey Media Networks. Wednesday, you can find the Student of the Game podcast with Kyle Nash on this network. Thursday night, it is Thanksgiving, but I'm bringing you a very, very special edition called Gobble Gobble Like No Other of D. Willie in the Evening. And as well as Friday, we've got the Duval Java Jaguars podcast. Before I get on out of here, I want to debut one thing real quick before I get on out of here, and that is the first ever commercial for D. Willie in the Evening, and then we'll roll on out. This little right here. Look at the inside of these cakes. Now, when you bite into it, just as I demonstrated while you were talking at the beginning of your discussion right there, I could taste the drugs inside of this cake, Sick. I could taste the addiction within the cream filling of this cake right here, to where they not only us with that cake right there, but they made an ice cream out of it. They made an ice cream out of it. A 1-pint Christmas tree cake ice cream. Look at that little just smile up there. Look, she is up to no good on there. Look at that. Look at that smile on there, Sick. She knows that she got you. Got him is what's in her mind right now.
Acknowledge me.
Look at that little smile right there. She's up to no good.
D. Willie in the evening. Thursdays at 11:15 p.m. Eastern, 10:15 p.m. Central. Exclusively on Sertoba Media, where the struggle is real to be awesome.
This right here is the promo graphic for that episode on Thursday. Gobble Gobble like no other is definitely going to be an interesting one for episode 9. For Robb Johnson, again, thank you as always for taking the time to be here. And myself, Drew Willingham, we only got one more thing to show you, and that is one badass outro. For again, Robb Johnson, I am Drew Willingham. Everybody, stay safe out there in these streets.
Where my soldiers, right side, Commanders. Where my soldiers, left side, Commanders. Where my soldiers, watch the middle, Commanders. Where my soldiers, where we step. Where my soldiers, right side, Commanders. Where my soldiers, left side, Commanders. Where we step. Where my soldiers, watch the middle. Commanders, where my soldiers,
Sertoba Media, where the struggle is real to be awesome.
You ain't got to go home, but you got to get on up out of here. Hope to see you next week for episode 13. Everybody make sure you like, share, and subscribe to the channel. I appreciate you. And again, stay safe out here in these streets.